I just spoke to an American Ranger who's back home having survived 4 tours in Afghanistan. And he said he goes back and forth from embarrassment and rage at America's deliberate, feckless betrayal of the Afghan people and all the Western militaries who thought they were waging a just war together. Now, those of you who've been on the Afghan battlefield know exactly what's going on right now over there. You know the Taliban. They just declared victory in the 20-year-old Afghan conflict, and they just chased the Americans out. And they intimidated and then absorbed soldiers of the Afghan army and the Afghan police units. And so now the Taliban controls everything with zero opposition, except from people like this, the woman who refused to put on a burqa today, and she was shot in the street. The Taliban is now rounding up enemies all over the country, but especially in the capital. They are raping girls as battle prizes. They are taking other girls as wives and military trophies. They're going door to door, finding anyone who worked with the United States, killing them on the spot, or in public executions at these sports stadiums. Now, yesterday they put up a wall of guns around the airport, and they're preventing anyone from getting through that wall, including those begging and screaming, trying to escape the new Afghanistan, which is really just the very old Afghanistan, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. So how do you men feel about all this? How do you feel about your investment in a war that you were told would rescue Afghanistan from Sharia government and shut down at least one terror hideout? I look at the suicide numbers in the United Kingdom and the United States, and I know a little bit about how you soldiers feel. There's so much terminal despair and despondency and hopelessness. You don't even want to go on living. But I'm going to tell you why and how you must go on, even though your investment in that war seems wasted, and even though the investment of your dead and wounded friends seems like utter futility and meaninglessness. Man, here's how you keep it together. Here are 4 deadly serious suggestions for you. Number 1, don't be like the heartless politicians who just ran away from their responsibility. You cannot retreat now like they did. This situation calls for you to fight again, but in a different way. But in much the same way you signed up voluntarily to risk your life and take orders in a hot, kinetic, dangerous war. Do you remember those days? You were willing to walk into the hellish conditions of war for the sake of other people. You were willing to die. You were willing to never come home. You were willing to sacrifice your life for strangers like me you've never met. And so I'm asking you to recover that same level of determination right now. Now, it's true when you landed at Bagram, you were not in charge of the war. All you could do on the battlefield was to act nobly when it came to your immediate unit. You protected your friends from the threats you could perceive, and you were on high alert all the time, 24/7. And so number 2, I want to tell you this. You men need to define these new threats with the same alertness and honesty that you are using on the battlefield. You need to fight to do this. It's not going to be easy. You need to be alert and sensitive. You need to fight, and you need to know how to. But now you already know how to fight. You should be able to do this. And what I'm talking about, you need to perceive the threats to your own thinking. For example, is it really your fault that President Biden pulled all the air support? No, it's not. Do you share any of the guilt for unjust policies that came out of the Pentagon? No, you don't. Should you personally feel any guilt that you made it home alive and your friends did not? Of course not. The God of battles preserved your life for his own reasons, and you cannot let yourself be defeated by ideas which are not true. And so this is what I mean when I say you need to fight, to define everything in truth and then hang on to it, and really hang on to it. And this, men, is a fight that you'll really need to wage mostly alone. Now, I hope you have some friends you can talk to. You can share this message with them and put your heads together and keep your heads in this fight with all the mental toughness that you learned in a real war. Now here's an honest question. Might you have some genuine guilt? Okay, I'm telling you, don't share the guilt for other people that you shouldn't share it with. But might you have some personal and genuine guilt for something that you might have done over there, which was wrong? And if so, what's the truth? You need to face up to that with alertness and honesty too, like every other question that I'm asking you to look at and take a hold of. And if you don't know how to deal with this guilt and go directly to Jesus Christ to get genuine forgiveness for very real sin, just please write to me. You can write to me here and I will explain it to you. But the point is this: take command of the things that you can define and deal with personally, just like you were doing in the battle space right around you. And I can tell you, thousands of soldiers have been, I'm old enough now. I used to talk to men who were veterans from World War I. I've interviewed many dozens of men who were veterans of World War II, and of course guys from the Vietnam War who were my age. There are many thousands of soldiers who have seen the very same evils that you have seen, and they have found peace in Christ and forgiveness for things which they personally did, which were wrong over there, and things that they've done here, back in the States, when things were easy. But in their minds and in their hearts and in history, it's settled now with them, and the guilt does not nag at them because they have peace. Now, if you want this kind of peace, and if you want to make sense of why you were there and why you survived, you need to take ownership of all your actions. But men, let me tell you this: do not wallow in guilt which belongs to other people, and stop trying to take responsibility for things you had no control over. Now on to point number three. I want you to remember good faith. Do you remember when your government told you that there were terrorists who needed to be killed, and that Afghanistan would be a just and a short-term war? Do you remember that? Do you remember how you trusted them and you joined up? Do you remember that response you had? That was good faith. Do you remember how much trust you put into men who cleared houses with you in the field? Do you remember how much trust you placed in American air support when you needed it and it was there? Do you remember how much trust your battle brothers placed in you? And did you know that there are people in the United States who could use your experience and skill set for the conflicts which are now falling on the American homeland, right now, today, right in your own local community? There are civilians in the U.S. who would trust you in good faith if you would simply step out and lead in your local community, organizing them, inspiring them, educating them, training them, teaching younger men what you learned on the battlefield in America's longest running war. Now, the men I tried to interview from World War I, World War II, most of them would just close up and they wouldn't talk. There were many things that I so wished I could have learned from them, and I didn't. How many young men could benefit from what you could teach them right now, today? You should do that. You should open up. You should teach them what you learned about life and death. And a lot of young guys need you to describe the hellish conditions of war that you've seen directly to them, first person. Or they may grow up and be ignorant of this. They may grow up and be the kind of blind politicians who don't know what warfare is or what it's for or when to stay out of it. And so you need to teach others about something else too. The apathy that you noticed and you saw when you came back to the United States, to the artificial world of passive American culture. And tell them what the difference is between real life and this life that they're living here in the United States, ignorant of what's going on. Tell them what it's like to be on full alert and to live every day like it's your last. Tell them about your friends who did live their last day with you, how they died, how they were willing to live and die bravely for something that they believed was noble. Do you want their lives to count for something? Then make, your life count for something from this point forward. Open your mouth and tell the story of the men who fought with you. Number 4, I want you men to learn active gratitude. Why did you make it out alive and your friends didn't? I don't know the answer. You don't know the answer. And we can never know that. But here's one thing that I do know. You can be grateful for the days that you've been given to live longer. More days to make something meaningful of your life. And your mind will open up to see opportunity the more grateful you are for hundreds of small things that you can see right around you. In the same way you turned on your antenna to notice and see everything around you in the battle space. And you need to be doing this now, to be grateful for things that you see in your peacetime conditions where you are. Don't use your energy to complain about the hard things. Use all of your mental bandwidth to be grateful. Maybe you came back not in one piece. Maybe you came back maimed. Maybe you can never have children. But what can you do? What can you be grateful for? Maybe you can adopt and give an orphan an opportunity to grow up and be a national hero like Major Geoffrey Botkin. He was conceived in a rape. He was abandoned by his mother. He was put in an orphanage. He was adopted. And then he grew up to be a military and intelligence hero. And he's the guy who told the deep state which wars were just and which ones were not. Yeah, he got in big trouble for it, but he spoke up and he told the truth, and he's a hero because of it. My point is this: you need to be grateful for every single minute you get on this planet, and you need to be thinking of ways that you can redeem those minutes that you are given. You have the God-given opportunity to continue the life that he gave you. That's where it started. And that's one thing that you can accept in truth. That is the honest truth. And you need to be grateful for your ability and opportunity to continue to fight. Maybe the first war that you fought in the sandbox was ill-conceived. I happen to believe that it was. But I happen to know that many men, like you and others and friends of mine, did their best to do the right and the noble thing in the situations that they were placed in. And they did do the right and noble thing. And let's just say that you were in a war that was not under the best circumstances, the most just, the most righteous. Well, you should have the wisdom by now as you look back on it to know why. If you think about it, if you analyze it, if you study it, and if you exercise gratitude for all the lessons that you learned from Afghanistan, you really will be far wiser for it. You'll be far wiser when you fight carefully in your next conflict. And the one you must fight right now is the battle for your mind. Man, you've got to fight this, and fight it hard. Fight the battle to be grateful. And so be grateful that you have that opportunity, and be grateful that you have the opportunity to help other men who are struggling to make sense of the world just like you are. Send them this message. Get on the phone to them. Talk to them. Support them. Teach them what you learn about genuine gratitude. Teach them what you're learning about the war and how to make sense of it, and then how to build meaningfulness into your life.